Roger. Good evening, I'm Ed Lingao. The big story is tonight. Typhoon Rolly gains strength as it inches closer to Aurora and Quezon provinces. The State Weather Bureau says it's likely that signal number 4 will be raised during its passage. The government has formed the COVID-19 vaccine task force. The group will spearhead the distribution of the shots once they become available. A man who claims to be a former communist rebel accuses progressive lawmakers of being fronts for the communists. The PBA indefinitely suspends its bubble tournament, this as they await the Health Department and the IATF to craft new health protocols. The U.S. polls reaches a new historic high as 80 million Americans already cast their ballots in early voting, with Election Day just days away. Oriental Mindoro is bracing itself for the worst as Typhoon Rolly approaches. Residents fear it could potentially bring the already struggling province to its knees. And to give us updates on their ongoing preparations, we have with us Justin Punsalang reporting live from Calapan, Oriental Mindoro. Justin.
Yes, Bok, the local government of Oriental Mindoro is now geared and ready to face Typhoon Rolly. However, the authorities are hoping that there will be no need to use their equipment. From life vests to chainsaws and even rescue boats, Oriental Mindoro's Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council is well equipped for the possible onslaught of Typhoon Rolly. PDRRMC head Vincent Gahol said this will just be used for backup, as they are hoping that residents will proactively follow preemptive plans during typhoons.
So ang ating bilin sa mga communities natin, kung talagang light materials yung bahay, sikapin na patatagin ito with limited resources ng ating mga magsasaka, mga ating mga mangingisda na apektado pa rin hanggang ngayon ng pandemya. Wala na halos silang kakayanan para patibayin pa yung kanilang mga bahay. So, ang option na natitira ay mag-evacuate.
Gahol said they advised residents living in high-risk areas such as the coastline, riverside, and mountainside to leave their homes because the typhoon may cause storm surges, flooding, and even landslide. Fishermen were also told to park their boats on higher ground as the winds and waves are expected to damage vessels, just like what happened previously during Typhoon Quinta. But while Rolly has yet to make the landfall, some fishermen took the opportunity to get a last-minute catch. They pray that this time around, the typhoon will not reach their province as they are still recovering from Quinta.
Hari na nga, awag naman dito na dumaan. Sana doon sa malayo para tuloy-tuloy yung aming pangingisda.
Paano tayo pag ito dumaan?
Ay di, nasa bahay lang kami, naghihintay uli kung kailan kumalma.
Business owners likewise are fearing if they can still survive after the next typhoon. They barely made profits since the lockdown started in March.
Swine flu, bulkan, tapos COVID, tapos ito na naman. Bago-bago ka palang sinusubukan tumayo, subukan mabuhay. Pero ito na naman, bagyo na naman. So it's really malungkot.
Meanwhile, in Barangay Aninuan in Puerto Galera, barangay officials started cutting down trees. This is to avoid these from blocking the highway should Rolly topple them.
Kasi ginagawa ho natin ito na pagkiklear ho ng daan para kung sakali ho may dumating na typhoon ay passable ho lagi yung ating mga highway.
Based on the latest data of the province's agriculture sector, they have already suffered a loss of 2.6 billion pesos, while structural damages in government properties is now at around 92.8 million pesos. And the whole province of Oriental Mindoro has been under state of calamity since Tuesday. This means that the LGU now has access to their calamity funds. However, the PDRRMC says that this is just enough to cover the basic needs of their residents, but not enough for their need to recover as they face the onslaught of the two typhoons. Ed?
Justin Punsalang from Oriental Mindoro. Typhoon Rolly has intensified as it moves westward over the Philippine Sea. As of 3 p.m., Rolly was spotted 990 kilometers east of Casiguran, Aurora, packing winds of 185 kilometers per hour and gustiness of up to 230 kph. Rolly is expected to make landfall over the Aurora, Quezon area on Sunday evening or Monday early morning. So far, signal number 1 has been raised over Catanduanes. Pag-asa says signal number 4 may be raised during Rolly's passage. A tropical storm outside the Philippine area of responsibility is also being monitored by Pag-asa. The tropical storm with international name Atsani was located 1,885 kilometers east of Visayas and is moving west-northwest at 35 kph. Pag-asa cautions residents living in both low-lying and mountainous areas of possible floods and landslides amid saturated land from the impact of Typhoon Quinta. The Office of Civil Defense also urges the public to make necessary preparations even if Typhoon Rolly would not reach a super typhoon level. The agency says countries have different standards in declaring typhoon categories, but nevertheless they are expecting Rolly to be comparable to Typhoon Tisoy in 2019.
Sa mga areas po ng mga nakaraang bagyo na nakaranas po ng mga pag-ulan ay ngayon pa lamang ay pinag-iingat at pinaghahanda po natin sila dahil nga po saturated na yung ating mga lupa ay yung mga pag-ulan po na dala nitong bagyong si Rolly ay magdudulot na po yan ng mga pagbaha at mga pagguho ng lupa.
Ang ating i-emphasize lang dito ay whether umabot man ito sa typhoon category ay napakalakas na hangin na yan.
The MRD3 management, on the other hand, has postponed its scheduled shutdown repairs over the weekend to ensure their workers' safety. The death toll from Typhoon Quinta has climbed to 22. 39 people were injured while 4 people are reported missing in 5 regions across the country, according to the NDRRMC. Damage to infrastructure is now pegged at 290 million pesos. Meanwhile, losses to the agriculture sector have hit 1.7 billion pesos. Batangas Province, one of the hardest hit areas, has declared a state of calamity due to the effects of Typhoon Quinta. Typhoon Rolly might also cause some price movement in agricultural products, but as it is, pork prices are now sky high due to supply issues. What is causing the shortage? Shyla Francisco tells us why.
For those planning to cook pork sinigang or nilaga just in time for the rainy season, prepare to shell out more cash. Once again, the Agriculture Department raised the suggested retail prices of pork amid price hike and supply issues brought about by the African swine fever. A kilo of kasem should cost 260 pesos, while liempo is now at 280 pesos per kilo. But retailers are unable to comply with the SRP. They say pork now sells for as much as 360 pesos a kilo. The spike in prices, they say, is due to higher logistical costs. Dealers are now sourcing supply from Visayas and Mindanao as Luzon faces a shortage of hogs.
Punan po natin ng baboy, 280 na. Tapos bibinta natin ng 280 pa rin. Wala po mangyayari sa sarado na lang tayo pagka ganun. Sobrang taas ng baboy.
Retailers said they can only adjust prices in wet markets if the DA will lower dealer prices. Even consumers are appealing to the DA to lower the cost of pork.
Babaan na yung presyo. Kami kaya afford ng taong medyo mahal.
The DA says they would not penalize retailers immediately, but they will first find out who the suppliers are to validate if there's profiteering. For now, they are increasing weekly shipments of hogs from Visayas and Mindanao to Luzon.
So what we're doing now is talking to the different sources of our pork para yun ang maidala sa ating mga retailers para makakomply naman po ang ating mga tindera.
But there's one more concern putting the DA on their toes. Typhoon Rolly. The DA is on alert for the supply of hogs and other agricultural products. This comes as they recorded 1.7 billion pesos worth of damages and losses to the sector brought by Typhoon Quinta. The DA assures the public that price movements due to the typhoon will only be temporary as the country has enough supply of basic agri-products.
So mabilis lang po siguro mayroong konting adjustment na mangyayari sa presyo na makikita natin sa palengke pero bababa po uli yan because at the end of the day we are still very sufficient.
The DA advises farmers to harvest crops early before Typhoon Rolly makes its landfall. Shaila Francisco, VR1 News.
We will go for a quick break when the big story returns. Another pharmaceutical company has applied to conduct trials in the country for the COVID-19 vaccine. And an alleged former rebel tags progressive lawmakers as fronts for the communist movement. The details up next. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. The government has formed a task force for the distribution of vaccines once they become available. Meanwhile, a fourth pharmaceutical company has applied to conduct vaccine trials in the country. Greg Gregorio with the details.
Clover Biopharmaceuticals joins 3 other manufacturers seeking to conduct vaccine trials in the Philippines. It has submitted its application to the Sub-Technical Working Group on COVID-19 vaccine development to hold late-stage clinical trials here. Other applications up for review are those from Sinovac, Gamaleya Research Institute, and Johnson & Johnson's. Sinovac was the first to secure a positive evaluation from the Science and Technology Department's Vaccine Expert Panel. It has a pending evaluation from the Ethics Review Board and a parallel technical evaluation from the Food and Drug Administration. FDA Director General Eric Dominguez says their decision may be released in 2 weeks, but the finality still depends on the ethics review findings. As for Russia's Gamaleya, the VEP is still looking into its candidate Sputnik 5. It has also submitted an application to the World Health Organization for pre-qualification. The FDA takes this as good news, but clarified that this may not affect the estimated time for the availability of a registered vaccine.
If they do undergo WHO pre-qualification, that means that they go to a very stringent regulatory evaluation. Because if it does get WHO pre-qualification, then that will make it eligible to apply for us for a certificate of product registration here in the Philippines.
Meanwhile, DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña earlier announced that a biotech company from Australia has expressed intentions to conduct clinical trial phase 3 in the country.
They're interested in making this available in the Philippines through one, possibility of clinical trials, and number two, partnering with a local manufacturing company to scale production. But of course, that is still going to be discussed. Wala pang negotiation na nangyari.
Montoya said several other manufacturers have inquired with the government. They just hope that deals will materialize. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
The Commission on Elections laments the low voter registration turnout so far. COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez says of the 4 million people expected to register by October, only around 500,000 showed up. The poll body is looking at establishing satellite voting registrations inside malls starting 2021.
A lot of people are hankering for mall registration since they're there anyway, and we're seriously looking at that, hopefully for next year.
Jimenez also told the chiefs that they are eyeing longer voting hours for 2022. Other proposed solutions are to extend the voting period to 2 days, as well as the installation of more polling precincts.
All of these solutions are promising in that they all lead to the same conclusion: fewer people in the polling place.
These are the other big stories today. Due to heightened red tagging, Makabayan bloc lawmakers filed before the Supreme Court a motion for temporary restraining order against the implementation of the Anti-Terror Act. The lawmakers said that progressive groups need injunctive relief as they have been made targets because of this law. The representatives also noted that the laws implementing rules and regulations and the multi-billion peso anti-terror funding establish the doggedness or the determination of government to implement what they say is an unconstitutional measure. Majority of Filipinos are still willing to comply with contact tracing efforts, at least according to an SWS survey. 97% of adult Filipinos say they will undergo self-quarantine if they came in contact with a COVID-19 positive patient. About the same percentage said that they will provide a list of close contacts should they test positive. 93% are willing to allow access to their mobile location data once they test positive, with 87% open to weekly tests to track the virus progression. Del Monte Philippines has officially listed its 6.47 billion peso fixed-rate bonds in the PDEX, or Philippine Dealing and Exchange Corporation, through a virtual listing ceremony today. The firm's maiden bond offering consists of 3-year bonds with an interest rate of around 3.5% and 5-year bonds with an interest rate of 3.7%. Del Monte says the funds raised from this issuance will be used to refinance and term out existing short-term loans and convert them into long-term liabilities. After the controversial red tagging incident involving several showbiz personalities, a former communist rebel has come forward accusing progressive lawmakers at the lower house of being fronts for communist groups. Ryan Ang with the story.
I am facing the nation today. Sa harap po ninyo, kasama ko mga dating kadre na nandito po. At ako po ay buhay na patotoo that there is no such thing as red tagging na ginagawa ang government.
This is Ka Eric. He claims to have been part of the armed wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines for 27 years before becoming a rebel returnee. He says no one forced him to give his testimony. He just wants to warn the public.
Hindi po ako lumabas para suportahan lamang si General Parlade or the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Lumabas po ako para sa taong bayan. The deceptive, manipulative, and skillful, masterful lies of the CPP, NPA, NDF, and the recruitment of the different sectors, more particularly of the youth sector and students, must be put to stop.
Celis was joined by 6 other individuals who also identified themselves as former cadres. They were silent during the aired live stream of the NTF-ELCAC Facebook page. Celis directly accused prominent names from the Makabayan bloc of the House of Representatives as front of the communist group.
Bigyan natin ng katuturan at pagtulong ang naghihinagpis na mga nanay na nawala ng mga anak na nirecruit ng grupo nila Sara Ilago and yet tinatago nila dyan sa mga safe houses nila, sa mga underground houses nila.
On Thursday, the League of Parents of the Philippines held a protest outside the UP campus to call out the CPP-NPA for allegedly brainwashing and recruiting UP students.
Huwag niyong hubugin ang aming kabataan na nandyan sa inyo na para sa maling paniniwala. Ginagawa niyo komunista ang mga bata. Huwag niyo i-deny ang connection niyo sa CPP-NPA.
The group wore black lipstick and lit candles to grieve with parents of young students who were recruited and were killed during encounters. They also posted a tarpaulin urging a stop to NPA recruitment. Following the issue between the NTF-ELCAC's Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade and celebrities allegedly being red-tagged, celebrities showed support for their colleagues by wearing red lipstick and using the hashtag No to Red Tagging and Yes to Red Lipstick on social media. Kapatid stars Ria, Pokwang, and Pauline also shared their sentiments on their program.
Now more than ever, tayong mga celebrities, we need to work together to protect one another.
Hindi red tagging ang problema natin, yung pandemya. Pwede bang yung...
Huwag nyo lang i-prioritize natin.
Please.
For Muntinlupa City, Representative Rupi Villason, who authored the House version of the anti-terror bill, the government, particularly the military, needs to be cautious with their actions.
We are cautioning, of course, the armed forces sa nakikita natin na parang lumalampas sila doon sa bounds ng dapat nilang ginagawa in terms of tagging certain personalities.
Senator Ping Lacson has sought an investigation into the supposed red tagging incident, summoning Parlade and militant groups to a Senate hearing. For News 5, Ryan Ang, We Are One News.
Let's pause for a quick break, and when we come back, the PBA indefinitely halts its bubble tournament as it awaits new protocols from the Health Department and the Interagency Task Force. And re-election as U.S. President Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Joe Biden head to Florida for the last stretch of their campaign before Election Day. Good evening, you're still watching The Big Story. Tollways were greeted with long lines for RFID stickers on Friday. That's despite the Transportation Department postponing the full implementation of cashless toll payments. Meanwhile, authorities are warning against resellers of fake RFID stickers online. Gerard de la Peña with the story.
Cars lining up for the installation of RFID stickers in Cavite Expressway reached almost a kilometer on Friday. This despite the move of the Transportation Department to push the deadline of the exclusive use of RFID for toll payments until December. But some motorists are not aware of the changes.
Inabot kami ng 1.5 hours.
Ngayon lang kasi kailangan na ng RFID.
The Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation will soon launch an online facility where motorists can register and avail of RFID stickers. Tollway companies are warning against individuals selling RFID stickers online for as much as 900 pesos. It is supposed to be given out for free, and a motorist only needs to pay for an initial load of 200 pesos. The NX Corporation said they don't have any authorized resellers.
It becomes a headache for the customer if he bought it from a reseller and the numbers and the registration does not add up. So it becomes a problem also for the other motorists in the toll lane.
Despite the extension, the DOTR has urged motorists to claim their RFID stickers as soon as they can.
Pagka magpipilit kang pumasok doon sa expressway na wala kang RFID, and then you will obstruct yung public flow dahil hindi ka makakapasok. So that would be a violation already. So you might be cited for tawag nila yan, yung disregarding traffic sign or obstruction of traffic.
The Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation is also gearing up for the expected deluge of motorists going out of Metro Manila. Vehicular volume may not be as heavy as last year, but Kimbo said many people will spend the long weekend visiting their families in nearby provinces. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
The Energy Regulatory Commission says some 6 million Lifeline consumers will benefit from its order for a no disconnection policy until the end of the year. Lifeline consumers are those whose consumption is within 200 kilowatt hours or kWh per month for those serviced by Meralco and an even smaller cap for those serviced by cooperatives. In an interview on Radio 5, ERC Chairman Agnes de Vanadero says the policy was extended due to the Bayanihan 2 law.
So, ang sinabi ng ERC, dito sa no disconnection policy, idoble natin. Kung ito yung example nga, kung 100 kilowatt hours per month ang inapprove ng ERC for Lifeliners, gawin natin 200. So, times 2. Para sa ganon, mahagip yung change, yung new normal na.
Meralco assures consumers that they will abide by the ERC's order and that there will be no disconnection for Lifeline consumers. Meralco spokesman Joe Zaldariaga says that around 70% of their customers will benefit from the policy. He says consumers not covered by the policy may avail of the 30-day grace period for settling balances.
Gusto kong i-emphasize, kami sa Meralco, as we have said time and again, we will be very considerate. Kumbaga kung talagang may difficulty, tumungo lang doon sa aming business center, pakipag-ugnayan lang, we will try to the best of how we can assist and help the consumer.
Vice President Leni Robredo underscores the importance of social justice to address the country's biggest problems like inequality and corruption. In a webinar hosted by the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance, Robredo says laws pushing poverty and social injustice too far need to be reformed. The Vice President highlighted the importance of accountability, public participation, and transparency to fight corruption and poverty. Citing the limited resources of the OVP, Robredo also asserted that virtues like trustworthiness are important in leadership.
Trust is our currency. We don't have a lot of mandate. We don't have a lot of resources. So we will have to depend on private partnerships for us to be able to do many of the things that we wanted to do. But because trust is our only currency, we work very hard towards that trust.
The PBA suspended all bubble games indefinitely starting today. This is in line with the recommendations of the IATF and the DOH to assure the PBA bubble remains safe against COVID-19. Games will remain postponed until new protocols are in place inside the Clark bubble. Despite strict health protocols, the league recorded 2 COVID-19 cases, which were later declared negative after succeeding tests. The record-breaking pace of early voters in the U.S. continues, with more than 80 million Americans casting their ballots ahead of the U.S. elections on November 3. So far, early voters account for more than 58% of the total turnout in 2016, when Donald Trump was elected president. Huge numbers voted by mail or at early in-person polling venues amid concerns of COVID-19 transmission during Election Day. Democrat candidate Joe Biden leads national opinion polls as voters express dismay over Trump's handling of the pandemic. The two went to the closely fought state of Florida for the final stretch of their campaign rally. Biden took a swipe at his rival for the way he holds his campaign events, while Trump has downplayed the virus multiple times, said another lockdown due to the pandemic will not happen under his watch.
Donald Trump just had a super spreader event here again. They're spending more than just coronavirus. He's spreading division and discord. We need a president who's going to bring us together. not pull us apart.
We're never going to lock down again. We locked down, we understood the disease, and now we're open for business, and that's what it is. And that's what it is. This explosive economic growth is 4 times greater than what the experts expected.
It's a different pumpkin fun in a city in Los Angeles this year. Residents enjoy Halloween at a safe distance at this drive-through ranch in Calabasas. Night of Jacks allows cars to drive through numerous themed pumpkin displays. The illuminated event features the iconic Hollywood sign, Alice in Wonderland, and dinosaurs. Some 5,000 pumpkins are used in the exhibit, and it takes around 25 minutes to complete the course. The contactless Halloween display is open until November 1. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. So please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News. Good evening and happy weekend.